think this is Casa Professa Church. It's supposed to be spectacular inside. What you can say when you first walk in here is wow. Certainly it looks like it's all been restored, but it's wow. I think this is Baroque, and that's probably a colossal understatement. The camera is quivering because it's like a perpetually fat person walking in a hungry state into a smorgasbord. It wants to consume the entire place in one fell swoop, and you can't do it with the camera. So I'm just letting it fly through these spaces, and then we'll explore with great detail. It simply is wow. I'm going to go up on top here so we can get a closer look. Mainly focusing on the central panels. And I've reorientated myself so that they will be correct on the camera. Look at the gorgeous colors. Are those original colors? Now I've reorientated you to give you some information. We're now facing the altar, but these are brilliant new colors because, as I said to the girl, one of my bombs apparently fell on it during the Second World War and wiped out this portion. But the area that we'll see down there, see the much more muted colors, those are original. While not religious, which is a phrase of such understated magnitude as to bring this entire edifice down into crumbled rumble, I can well imagine how a person coming in here with a simple mind, not to mention mind, well, feeling somehow that they really were experiencing what heaven would be like, filled with this apparent, inherent beauty in endless magnitude. There aren't enough superlatives for me to throw at it spontaneously to reflect the feeling you have when you're here. Okay, at this position I'm about dead center underneath the cross of the cross, looking straight up into the dome, and I'm just going to pan down. So those colors are the original colors, perhaps restored, but original nevertheless. I've moved the telephoto so we're right up inside the dome looking at that top portion and get a closer look at some of that stained glass. Again, underneath the dome, I'm shooting down the right side of the transept, if that's the right term. In other words, the right-hand side of the cross, just so we can see it. And now the left hand. And don't be alarmed, I'm going to focus in on detail in a few minutes. And in case you didn't get the point of this church when you were sitting facing me with the altar behind me, I'll give us this perspective that you have on the way out. And now up to that stained glass panel. In most churches, the organ's on one side and the choir on the other. In this church, the organ's on both sides of the altar, if you will. And then I think the choir may have been installed in these balconies here, but I can't be sure. I'd love to hear that organ play in this space. When I approached the altar space, I just wanted to pan this floor. Because remember, in most cathedrals in the early day, there were no pews. You stood. And so this would have been visible, particularly to the early arrivers on a church day. All of the floor would have been seen in its glory. And you can't approach the altar, but I went back and specifically asked if I could, so I would not be disrespectful in doing so. And you can. And so we're not disrespectful. And we'll go behind the altar because that is the rarest of places for us to see. Now, in many churches, there's the iconostasy, which just about at this point here would be a solid wall that we could not see behind intentionally, in essence to enhance the mystery between the real world today and the world of heaven, which theoretically was behind the screen as seen by parishioners. Okay, now we're back inside here. For those who work in the church, like Duke once did as an altar boy, maybe this is your access to the candles. And probably one of the most revered places to be buried in this church, more so than even the crypt, would be here, which is where Paolo Achilles is buried, apparently. Now soak in this three-dimensional sculpturing and recognize that most people never saw this, not this part. You wonder what the story is. Certainly it looks like a Roman centurion of some sort, but why the man with the cask? Does it somehow have something to do with wine? And look at this little set piece. And here another. These being almost throwaways in the decoration, but look at the work that went into them. And what did they symbolize? Must have been something to the artist. But in this phantasmagoric of sculpture, it's completely lost. Here another with a woman. And what's the significance of the man with the fruit? Again, looking at the soldier. Panel, if we look closely, it's not hard to figure what it's about. These angels are doing some serious damage with hammer and fire, not to mention some serious damage done with a sword to these people who are en route to or have arrived in hell. A bell for signifying something. Now I'm directly underneath the stained glass picture of Jesus. Here we're looking at Jesus, probably God on the right. Mary on the right, holding the baby Jesus, it looks like, but almost in the situation that she did after the crucifixion. Now I've turned around to look at the other side and its sculptures. No doubt Mary at the top. And here it appears that a Roman centurion, notice the bearer of the sword standing behind him, is accepting some offering from a religious leader, perhaps showing the acquiescence of the church to the power of Rome. And what do these little sets of guys imply? Notice here again, you scoundrels, that the angels are precipitating some really nasty stuff onto something. Now this something here is curious. It's not one of us because it has wings, but it has chains on it for some reason. So perhaps it represents the subjugation of the devil. That's possible. Here, interestingly enough, a couple of fishy things with tails intertwined. These bowls hold holy water for the priests as they entered to do their thing. This is interesting. He's holding implements that look like they're design implements, like what an architect might hold. But here it looks like a hatchet, but I think that device that looks like it's wrapped in ribbons is some kind of a scroll. All this marble looks to be as though it is a thin stone, perhaps, that's embedded in the face. What amazing work. Yikes. Here next to it, a less dramatic slab of marble. This picture, I believe, symbolizes or portrays the three wise men making offerings to Jesus. Perhaps that's God or Joseph in the background, I don't know. But actually from a distance, the Jesus reminds me of E.T. But as we get closer and see both Jesus and Mary, what a brilliant little bit of photograph of art. Notice how the artist in that massive darkness has slightly offset the brilliance behind Jesus with some emerging light, perhaps suggesting that the emergence of Christianity represents an emergence of light, of spirit in all of mankind. Artistically also, it offsets the dark a bit without letting you leave the brilliance of Jesus. It's interesting, it's underneath an organ balcony, but the face is almost a modern-day woman. This intricate wall relief work is carried on into this side chapel. I want to look at that altar, though. It really is a rare opportunity to invade the precincts of an altar. I've never been able to do this, except in defunct churches. Here it's covered with glass to protect what must be original work. But look at that, particularly if it's all inlaid. Remarkable. Now this seems to be God in all of his powerful fury. Like, listen up, sinners. I'm about ready to rain some serious hell on you people if you don't clean up your act down there. This is probably the most extravagant computer stand or iPod stand I've seen. Just happens to be used for a Bible. Look at this beautiful, I think it's called a balustrade, but this fencing, if you will. This is a side chapel that is certainly consistent with the church and awesomely dramatic. Whoever paid for this one paid for a majestic work. I really do believe, in spite of everything they did, that God should release them from purgatory about now. Let's go up and look. Now using digital zoom, I'll go right up into this. One of the things that's always entranced me about shooting video or being in these huge cathedrals is the different views you have down through columns, up through column spaces, into vaulted spaces. Almost makes me wish I believed, because then I could imagine what the future might hold had I been a different person. Nicer, I mean. Here's a shot of that magnificent inlaid floor. I've seen this work before in other churches here. It still impresses me. Here are one of the notables of the apostles, I assume. Forget which one was the hermit, but that's what this would seem to symbolize. Imagine your life spent in that nature, in that way. I can only hope that these video pans somehow give you and I both a sense of the grandeur and the space. A two-person confessional, it appears to be at any rate, which certainly raises some magnificent artistic, literary options. The more time I spend in here, there's almost a crushing sense of art, of sculpture, as though in any minute it could all collapse around me. It's interesting how this chapel was blessed, excuse the pun, with natural sunlight. I wonder if this family paid a premium for this location because of that. A little bit of a focus on the motifs, the peacocks, the eagles. Did this reflect some Norman influence, some England king influence? Elsewhere it's suggested here a motif of two, I'm guessing they are women, but they're powerfully built if they are. Can't be sure. I'd have to think they were men. And it looks like two geese above them. I'll pan down this whole panel carefully so you can see the different elements of it. Birds, of course, different kinds, I think. There are a couple drinking from a water basin. Did the artist and the family who built this, I would imagine, spent considerable time discussing these elements, these designs, and wallowing in their self-glory? Here the bird motif is carried through in the intricate inlay of this banister. Notice the snake as part of this motif. And here the lion. Could this have been the family's crest? And here we see some sea critters. Tails almost entwined again. Wouldn't you think the family came here and prayed, believing it almost gave them a direct line connection to God? Here, almost at the front of the church, certainly appears to be a crest of some sort. And here's some more lions being restrained or controlled by angels. And here's one of those great machines. Now, as I look closely at this, it appears to be capable of rising 3 times the height you see there. Notice each has its little hand guards. Here's the mechanism for raising it, and presumably a catch to hold it in place. And if you want one, you can perhaps order it from there.